So, my name's Christina Mellor. I'm a fashion and portrait photographer in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I'm really passionate about telling people's stories, capturing what makes people feel really authentic to themselves, and sharing basically how art can be healing and seeing yourself through someone else's lens can be really healing. So that's what I do. I'm really passionate about photography and also just the way that photography can change the way that people see themselves.
Well, honestly, I think your stuff is amazing. I've looked at it and I think it's awesome how you place people in nature so that it just looks so much, I don't know, it sounds stupid, so much better than normal photography. And, it's just like, I'll look at other people's stuff and I'm like, but I see your stuff, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And I mean, I know I'm a
Thank
little
you.
biased, but it's really good. And I've always wondered, like, how do you know where to put people? How do you create that, that
Mm.
feeling that your photography has?
Oh, wow. That's such a good question. I think that a lot of it comes from trying to zoom out because I feel like when I get really into a photo shoot, I have all these things going in my brain of like like maybe photos that I've seen before or photos that I think that they want. And then I try to like take myself out, zoom out and say, Christina, look around. Like, what do you see? And being able to like see the scene in front of me from a different set of eyes, from a fresh perspective, I think that that really helps me because then I can more clearly see where will my subject shine the most. And so, for example, with an outdoor photo shoot with something in nature, it's easy to have a bunch of distracting things in the background that are taking away the focus from your subject. And so, finding somewhere that complements them but doesn't distract from them, I think that that's a really big part of what I do.
Could you kind of, for some background, just kind of tell us a brief version of your story, from start to finish? And I mean, you've gotten all the way to the point where you're like taking pictures of people that are sort of famous, So can we see how that happened a little bit? Give us the cliff
Sure.
cliff notes,
Yeah. Okay. So I started when I was younger taking photos. My dad had this like little point and shoot little blue camera, and I remember just taking pictures of the grass outside and flowers. And it was I was obsessed with the feeling of like, I want to be able to create something that feels how it does in my head. Like I want like the way that I see something, I want to be able to capture that so I can show someone the way that I see it. And then over the years, I got more into like taking pictures with my phone. I had this little tiny Instagram where I posted. Honestly, they were all horribly edited. I went through a really blue phase where everything was just really cold. It was. I had to go through some phases, but I got really into the way that I could make a feed look and the way that I felt when I was taking photos of myself and of my friends. And then my little sister was like my first model. Took lots of photos of her. And then I got my first camera when I was 18. And I just remember that there was a couple times where like I had no idea what I was doing. But there was a couple times where I got the lighting right or I got right and there was this like feeling to the photo and I just got hooked on that feeling pretty much. And so that was like 18. I took photos pretty casually for the next couple years, friends and family. And then I remember like the feeling of taking on my first client. I think I charged them $30. Like it was like nerve wracking for me. And I think that because I let it be something that was playful for so long, I really developed such a love for it. And I didn't make it a business for years. I had years and years of taking photos of people before I decided to go full time. And so I was working at an HR job that I didn't love. I was doing sales. I wasn't really happy there, but it was very secure, like a big girl job type of thing. And I had a lot of fear about leaving that to do photography. But I just got to a point where my photography and my normal job were taking about the same amount of time. And I was also making about the same amount of money. And so I was like, okay, I literally like had to talk myself through it because I was like, okay, Christina, you can always go get another job that you hate. Like if you hate this job, you can always go get another one. There's plenty of sales jobs out there. You can go be miserable anytime. Like there is that safety net. There is that safety net. I can always go get another job, but this is my opportunity to take a chance on myself. And if I fail, I fail. I'll go get another job. That's literally the only way that I could get myself to feel comfortable enough to do it. So that was 3 years ago that I quit my job and went full time with photography. And honestly, I don't know if I really thought that it was going to be successful. Like, I kind of anticipated that it wouldn't, which is so sad. And like, that's not advice I would give someone now. Like, don't go in thinking that you're going to fail. But I am really glad that I took that leap anyways, because it just kept working. And so basically, when I went full time, I was kind of trying to be everyone's photographer, like take photos. I did lots of weddings and families and all of these things that make money in photography. And I tried to like follow the path of like, okay, here's what you do when you're a photographer. And I got really burnt out. I think I did like 30 something weddings in a year. I was exhausted. I was also kind of like really turned off from the wedding industry, because when you see it up close like that, the magic is kind of demystified, and you're like, oh, these people are pretty stressed on their wedding day. Like, this is kind of a stressful experience. And I realized that it wasn't lighting me up. And so there was a period of time in my career where I had kind of turned in my artistry, turned in my creativity for money. And so I like stopped doing the things that felt creatively fulfilling for me, and I started doing the things that made me money. And I think that was like a really fear-based approach to my career. And a big change happened for me when I started to focus more on my own inner healing and my own happiness, like following, okay, what is it that lights me up? What is it that makes me happy to come to work every day? What are the photo shoots that feel like, when I'm walking away, what are the ones where I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to edit these? Like, what photo shoots create that feeling in me? Because I realized that even if let's say I followed what actually made me happy and that wasn't profitable and I had to go get another job, nothing was worth ruining my love for photography, which is what I was going to do if I kept doing things I didn't like doing. And so what I realized is that the photo shoots that made me the absolute brightest, that made me the absolute happiest, were the ones where someone was coming to me to celebrate their story in some way or another at that point in their life. And I had some experiences, like there was this one woman. She reached out to me to do a couples photo shoot for her and her husband. They were going to redo their vows. And then I stopped hearing from her. She ghosted for a year. And so I was like, okay, cool, we're not doing it. And she reached out a year later and was like, hey, I'm ready to do that photo shoot. But now I am single and I've lost 50 pounds. And I am doing a photo shoot to celebrate losing the weight of my husband and also the physical weight. And on the photo shoot, she told me that he was abusive and that it was a really bad marriage and that it was something that she was super stuck in. And she was like, I took a year to focus on myself, and now I am the happiest I've ever been. And this is what I want to invest in. This is what I want pictures to remember. And yeah, experiences like that, like literally it gave me chills. It gave me chills to watch people come out of something so hard and basically like watch the resilience of humans. I loved it. And so I started to notice that was what really lit me up. That and like super creative, abstract fashion type of photos. I loved things that were like weird and bizarre and made you look again. And so I just started to say no to projects that I didn't want to do, and instead pour my attention, focus, and love into projects that I did want to do. And because of this, my whole business has changed. And it's really incredible what happens when you do this, when you niche down, when you specialize, because I no longer am competing with other photographers by like trying to have the lower pricing or trying to like reply the quickest or trying to have the quickest turnaround time, basically overworking myself or doing longer photo shoots to like try and beat the competition. There is no competition when you are following your path. You are the only one that can do what you do because it's unique to you. It's what makes you special. And so I think that realizing that my love for connecting with humans and sharing, and that the ability to like take someone's story and share, I realized that that was what made me special, and that that's what made no competition for me. It's just me, because I'm the only one that has my brain, my heart, and my soul, and I bring all of that to my work. And so because of that, I was able to change my pricing, start getting paid a fair amount, which means that I had to work a lot less, which means that I'm not burnt out, which means that I have more love and energy to pour into the things that bring me more people that are like me. And so I just started to notice that like the clients that I was getting were photo shoots that I would have planned and shot with a model anyways. Like they were things that really lit me up and I thought were so cool and so fun, but suddenly like that's my career and that's what I'm getting paid to do. And so yeah, that's where I'm at now. I'm feeling pretty good.
Well, it's so cool because I know some people almost pay you for the experience of having pictures taken with you. Like it's they love your style, your unique look. Sometimes, the way you'll do your hair, like they love that experience. And it seems like you have a really easy time collaborating with people because they love you so much. They just want to be a part of it anyway. Like,
I love that. People want to be part of cool things. When someone has found what lights them up, people feel that energy and they want to participate. You're so right.
Well, it's just cool. And I was wondering if you could kind of share just some of your photo shoots that you're most proud of, like some of your accomplishments, if you will, specific stories maybe.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of highlights. I think a big one was I had Willow Shields reach out to me, which she's Prim on Hunger Games, and like I was obsessed with that movie. I read all the books, and it was just kind of like an out of body experience later to be like, if only 11-year-old me knew, that like I was watching this movie that I like loved, and that one day I would shoot with one of the main people in it. So she reached out to me. That was really fun. We were going to plan this whole big shoot, and then she got called to film a movie, had to leave in 24 hours. And so we had 24 hours to put together a photo shoot. It was one of those like magical frenzies where you're like, we're going to make this happen. And so we ended up going and shooting by this big lake, and we had these florals that went from like up from her head and then around her body as well. And I love that photo shoot to this day. So that was like a very exciting moment for me of being like, okay, like we're doing something. But some other ones that have been really transformative for me, there was this one client that I worked with. So they had a really horrible car accident. They were driving, someone else was driving, they were in the back, and that someone else was on their phone. They were on the freeway. They turned a corner and they ran into a semi. And so this person went to the hospital, was in a coma, and had a bunch of like brain damage from this event. And they were 18. They just moved out of their parents' house like weeks before. They had to move back in, lost touch with a lot of their friends and family, went through like this stage of grief for the life that they thought that they were going to have. And because of this, they realized, wow, okay, life is really short. And they realized that they hadn't been truly authentic to themselves in the way that they were expressing themselves and the way that they were telling people about who they were. And so they changed their life. They came out as non-binary, which is something that they had on their chest for a long time, but hadn't been brave enough to like tell their family and friends. They came out as non-binary. They started dressing the way they wanted to, making the art that they wanted to, and trying to just live every day like it was their last, because they realized how fragile life is and how close they were to not having that. And they told me the story. They told me their whole story, and they told me that their mom, when they came out to them, their mom was like, you know what, I love you, and you're my little alien baby, like I love you. And so we took that line, you're my little alien baby, and we did a photo shoot that was meant to feel like otherworldly. And so we did like this galaxy makeup on their face, and like we had them out at the salt flats, which is basically this location that stretches just salt on the floor. So it's just white cracked ground for miles. So there's really nothing in the background. So it felt like we were on like the moon, and we were shooting with all these weird props, and it just felt so beautiful to like celebrate who this person actually was, and to give them an opportunity to like really shine. And so that was a really fun one. But yeah, those are the photo shoots where I'm like, okay, this is what I love.
That's really cool. You love the story, you know, the feeling,
Yeah.
it's awesome. And I was actually going to ask you kind of a backtracking question. So I remember when we were growing up, you were also very musical. And, you know, you and Lydia, you'd both play piano and things like that. How did you make the call to kind of step away from music and into photography? Because you were talented in both areas. You could have probably done either.
Thank you. Wow, that is like I think a really important part of my creative journey, because I think I learned how to create the wrong way, and it became very apparent. So like with piano, I made it a core part of my identity, and I think that this is like pretty common for kids when they're realizing that they're good at something, when they're realizing that they find a lot of joy and expression in something, it becomes so core to who they are that if they have to stop doing it or it changes, they have a big identity like crisis. And so that's what happened with me. I poured myself into music, but I think that I poured myself into music wanting to have value. I wanted to make something that was important, because that made me feel important, and because of that, I didn't treat my creativity with respect. I think that I really overworked. And so like I studied music all throughout high school. In high school, I was practicing like 8 hours a day. And then I went to college, majored in music for the first year, and spent my whole life doing it. Like it was all of my time. And I remember like very vivid moments of my fingers cramping and looking up, and it would be like 2, 3 a.m. and I had to be up for my classes the next day. And I sucked the joy out of music for myself. And I think that because I started kind of late, I didn't start playing the piano till I was like 11, which is so late in the music world. Like music world's kind of like the dance world. Like you start when you're 3, 4. And so I think that because I started so late, I felt so much pressure to like work harder than other people. And when I stopped playing, I stopped playing. Like when I decided that I wasn't going to major in music anymore, I abandoned the piano. And it was heartbreaking. It was like the loss of a love, a loss of something a loss of myself. Like I really identified so much with making music. And I was like, well, that's it. Like I'm just not creative. I'm just not cut out for creation. I switched to communications and I was like, I'll just, I can talk to people. I'll do that. And it was a hard time. It was a really hard time in my life. And photography, I think that I almost did that with photography when I was overworking with weddings. I think I almost did that with photography. I think maybe for different reasons. It wasn't as much about worth, but it was about like career, like wanting to have money, wanting to succeed, wanting to work for myself. And I am so thankful that I started to feel, so basically I started to feel all of those feelings of like disinterest in my craft and lack of inspiration. I mean, there was months at a time where I was like, I'm not creative. I must not be creative. Like it's abandoned me. It's abandoned me, or maybe everything that I ever did was a fluke. Like I had really bad imposter syndrome. And it's something that I still work through today. And like, all I know is that what's helped it a lot is like being really kind to myself, being really, really kind to myself, and treating my creativity as if it's another entity. It's something that I'm caring for. And so for me, that looks like not overworking. That's really important to me. It looks like not working for free. I did that a lot. I did that a lot where someone would just like, want me to help them with something. And the problem was I did it when I didn't want to. Now I can do it when I want to. But the problem is I did it for people that were trying to take advantage of that part of me. And so I basically had to like look at my creativity as this like being that I was protecting. And so I set boundaries. I raised my prices. I stopped working as much. I stopped overbooking myself. I stopped taking on projects I didn't want to. And then I also recognized the fact that I need to have other creative outlets besides photography. And so I've gone really into drawing and painting and macrame and plants and lots of different crafts. And currently I'm making stickers. Like I always have something. Oh, and like obviously florals, I got really into decorating my house and creating a beautiful space to be in, I think was a big part of it as well. Creating basically a playground for my creativity that when I look around, I'm inspired. And so I think that all of those things, just like respecting my time, respecting my space and my energy really, really helped to take a step back and be like, we're not doing the thing anymore where we tell ourselves that we're not a creative person. That's just crazy. Like, obviously you are. Obviously you are a being who loves to create and share. And so now that we're done gaslighting ourselves about that, now it's time to protect that and figure out how to make that sustainable. And basically that for me just looks like following what flows and not forcing things. If something feels too forced, if something feels like it's not authentic to me, I know that I'm not going to like the outcome anyways, because even if it looks really pretty, even if it gets a lot of likes on Instagram, it didn't feel authentic to me. And so it's going to like be another tally in my brain of like, this is not authentic, creating is not authentic. And so now I'm very protective of things that aren't authentic. I don't want it because I would so much rather follow what feels good and like keep that relationship with myself really strong.
Well, I think that's kind of why I like doing these interviews. It's because they just feel more in line with like my purpose on my channel. I'm trying to figure out how I can add value. And one of the best ways to do that is to talk to the people that add value in their own way and to learn from them. And so this has made making videos a lot easier. And it's just the last video, for example, did really well. People loved it. So it's working. And I just think it's
That's
cool
awesome
to make content the way you like, because I'd much rather do
Yes.
this than just sit in front of the camera by myself.
Yes. What you like is going to be what resonates with other people. That authenticity is what draws people in.
Well, I also think it gives you great ideas because, like, literally during this call, I had the idea that, how we've talked about starting a YouTube channel for you.
Yeah.
Part of me thinks we should make some of your first videos interview style like this because it's easier,
Yeah.
So, you may do that, you may not, but, ideas come when we talk to other people. And I love that.
Yes. I think that creation is done so much in community.
The other thing that I was hoping to hear from you is, can you just tell us some of your crazy stories about, since you're a successful photographer and you have a huge following on Instagram, I'm sure some funny stuff has happened on social media and, as you've worked with clients. So can you kind of just share some of the good stuff with us?
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. So something that was kind of funny on social media was I tweeted this, thing, and it wasn't photography related. It was about, at the time with my ex, we were living in this apartment with 2 bedrooms. And I tweeted about like normalize couples living in different bedrooms. And it went viral. Like, I think 12 million people saw it or something like that. Which was so funny because the exposure to that, like I was posted on all these like meme pages and stuff, and like I was getting such heated feedback from people, and it was just kind of one of those things where you have like an out of body like zoom out moment where you're like, oh, the internet is a funny place, and we're all kind of just like when people have opinions about what you do, it's more about them. It's more about them. It's more about their feelings. We all kind of project a little bit. And so it was kind of a good practice to be like, okay, I think that something that was really helpful from this was like, don't take advice from someone, don't take feedback from someone that you wouldn't take advice from. And so like especially if someone's ever like putting hate on my videos or like, when it comes to my photography, like sometimes I get like people commenting, trolls and stuff like about edits or whatever, and it's like when I go to their profile and there's no post and there's 3 posts and it's their dog, I'm like, okay, cool. Thank you for your unsolicited opinion. But also like, I am not going to take advice from you because you're not, like Brene Brown says this thing where she's like, you're not in the trenches of vulnerability. Like, I don't take advice from people who aren't in the trenches of vulnerability. And I really, really resonate with that of like, I don't know, like, only valuing input from people who are also being brave in the ways that I am. Like, people think it's easy to constantly post content of yourself and you talking and you sharing your creations. Like, it's deeply personal, and it's like, I share because I think that there's value to what I have to say. And I think that people can benefit from my story and my experience. But that doesn't mean that it's effortless, right? And so, like, I think that putting that protection around me of like, my opinion is the one that's most important. And also, like, if you're not doing your own thing that I would want to do myself, then why does your feedback matter to me? That's more about you. You know, you hating on me is more about your own fear of putting yourself out there. And so I think that, like, as a person that like has a lot, I'm neurodivergent, and I'm also divergent in a lot of other ways. I'm polyamorous. I just live kind of an atypical life. And so I think that, like, putting myself out there and like being real with like the way that I love people and the way that I live and the way that I flow in this world is it's not very conformed to the way that people think that they should. And so I think that that's my power. And I think that that's also something that I have to be like mindful that, like, I had to overcome my own internalized shame to exist in the world and not be embarrassed about the space that I take up. And so, of course, other people also have their own internalized shame about taking up space in this world. And when they see someone who's taking up a lot of space in ways that they wouldn't allow themselves to, being queer, being non-binary, like being polyamorous, you know, being an artist, being like openly neurodivergent, and like talking about my mental health and like not having that be something that's shameful. I think that when people have their own shame about those subjects, it can be really triggering to see other people who have overcome that shame. And so I think that, like, that's been a big internet lesson for me, is that it's really just okay to be yourself and to let other people feel however they need to feel about that. It's not their life, it's yours. So why are you living it for anyone else?
Is that tweet still there, or did you take it down?
It's still there.
Did you have to turn notifications off because it was just like?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it was the most crazy thing. It was just like, okay, this is the tweet that goes viral. Y'all got me messed up. Like, whatever.
Let's cycle back to inspiration, because you've brought that up a lot here. How can people get inspired again when they're in a rut? Because I talk to a lot of people that have burnout, for example. If someone's telling you they're burned out, what would you tell them?
So I've talked with I do mentor sessions for photographers, and this is something that comes up. This is something that comes up for sure. And I think that my biggest piece of advice is to rest. And it's like, that's really hard for people to hear. And it's even hard for myself. Whenever I like take a break from posting, I always have this like voice in my head of like, you're going to lose it all, right? Which is such a scarcity mindset that I have to constantly be engaged, or it's all going to fall away. And so, like, a gift that I give myself is resting when I need to rest. And that is the most beneficial thing for me. I think that part of Brene Brown. So I'm obsessed with Brene Brown. I listen to her literally every day. One of the things that she researches is about how the only solution for true overwhelm, is nothingness. It's like a blanket over your head, no stimuli, like letting there be nothing. And so I think that when you're feeling really overwhelmed, I think that there's a tendency to either make like really rash decisions in that moment, and like quit or like extend yourself further than you are able to. I think that coming back to like, okay, this is not life or death. And the content that I'm going to be creating when I'm burnt out is not going to be resonating with people anyways. And so, like, how can I fill back up? How can I restore? And so for me, that looks like being in nature. For me, that looks like connection. Conversation with people is so restorative to me. I think that, like, sometimes we get really in our own bubble and forget that there's a whole community of people who probably are feeling what you're feeling too. And that want to support you. And so I think that being in community, talking about how you feel and not burying it, can be a really great way to like express, get it out so that you have room to fill it back up. And so, like, how are we going to fill it back up? For me, that's being outside, going for walks, spending time with my dog Timber, spending time with other art forms, other ways to create, reading. I think that a big piece of my inspiration is consuming content from people who are daring bravely in the ways that I want to. And so like finding people that I am inspired by and supporting them is a really great way for me to get out of my own bubble, because I think that the more burnt out we are, the more our like vision narrows and we get more and more stressed and think about the things that we can't do, the things that we can't feel, the things that aren't working. And we narrow in on that and we create more of that by focusing on that. And so I think that we need to focus on things that uplift and focus on things that expand, and kind of, instead of that, like narrowing, things that expand and feel like we can breathe easier. And so finding those things that feel really authentic to you and really restorative and leaning into those, I think, is the best way to overcome burnout. And suddenly you're having ideas again, because you're not like focusing on the way that you don't have ideas. You're focusing on other things. You're focusing on other people's art, the beauty that's all around us. Like, there's love and beauty everywhere. You just have to open your eyes. You just have to look for it. I make it a goal of mine every day to like find proof of love and connection everywhere I go. Because our brain's job is to prove what we believe about the world to be correct. And so we have all this confirmation bias. And so if you believe that there's love, creation, and inspiration everywhere, you find it. And if you believe that everyone is a bad person and that everyone's against you and that no one wants you to succeed, that is what you'll find. And so like manifesting more for yourself by focusing on the things that you want instead of the things that you can't have.
Oh, I can totally relate to what you were just saying about what you focus on, because I'm not going to lie. Recently, I just got a little bit better at being a little more positive. And for the longest time, I didn't even realize how consistently negative I was until some recent change happened. I'm like, wow. I mean, I always try to at least put on a good positive face, but it hasn't always been there. And a lot of it's been internal too, like even negativity that nobody would see, but it was happening on the inside. And
what has that been like for you?
It was really hard. I mean, I would often drive to work and just kind of, fume in my head on the way to work instead of just looking for the many, many things that I should be grateful for, so it's very easy to do anyway.
So what has that been like for you as you've like changed some of that perspective? What have you noticed?
Oh, I felt huge burdens they were burdens that I was really creating and just carrying around almost with like pride, like, look at me, versus just dropping them. And now I feel like I can fly. It's ridiculous.
I love that. That makes me so happy. That's awesome, Adam.
It's still confusing though, because I read this book that helped me, and it might not help you. It just helped me during the experience of reading it. But now I can't fully articulate what changed, but something did, and I can feel it. And I'm like, wow.
What book?
It's called The Peace Giver. And
I think I've read that.
Anyway, it helped me a ton. I mean, somebody else might read it and be like, I already know this, but for me, it was huge. And I
those mindset shifts.
Yeah, I finally had to go like, I need some help. And so I started talking to people, and somebody recommended it, and I was like, wow,
that's awesome. I just finished a book called The Mastery of Love, which is about like the way we love the people around us, and that has like changed me forever. That's a really good one too. Yeah, really good.
So if you don't mind me switching gears a little bit on you, let's talk again about business. So say somebody comes to you and they're like, I want to start a successful business, maybe even in photography. What would you tell them to help them make that happen? Because most people fail when they start a business, and you're the exception. You didn't fail. So how did you make that happen?
Wow. I think that the advice that I would give someone now is all of the things that I struggled with, if that makes sense. Like I would tell them the ways that I overcame the things that I wasn't good at. So it's hard for me to identify, because like somehow I'm here, even though like the business side of it has been the hardest part for me. Like I'm such a creative, I'm such an artist, but I'm not, I for a long time, I didn't identify with like a business person. So now I'm starting to step into more of those roles. But I think that the advice I would give is that, so number one, we have to separate you from your art a little bit. And what I mean by this is that like a lot of artists I know feel really embarrassed promoting themselves, and feel like they're making it all about them, feel like they're being annoying, feel like they're, spamming people if they post about something more than once. But if we look at it from a business standpoint, people have to see or hear about something at least 3 times before they'll even begin to consider it for themselves. And so you have to post about it multiple times. And not only that, but like also, if you're posting on your stories and stuff, look at your follower count, look at how many people are seeing your stories. Not everyone's seeing your stories. On different days, different people are going to see your stories. And so you have to share. You have to share and understand that's not you being like attention seeking or like you being too much or annoying. Like if someone is following you, it's because they're interested in what you're doing. And so they're not going to follow you if they think that you're annoying. And if they unfollow you, cool. I think that that's another thing that like I really had to learn is that back in the beginning of my business, I had like a followers tracking app on my phone. And like I got my feelings hurt about people unfollowing me. And like that was a big like awakening for me. I was like, Christina, like Christina, I would never follow someone that I didn't enjoy following, right? Like for whatever reason, their content didn't resonate with me. And whenever it popped up, I didn't want to see it. I would unfollow them. And like, I realized that actually that's what's best, because if someone is following you, but never engages with your content, it makes your engagement go down. And so like when people get fake followers on Instagram, when they buy followers, it tanks their account because now Instagram sees that a bunch of people follow you and no one cares about what you're doing. And so they don't show your stuff to new people. And so the best thing that you can do is be okay with people leaving and only wanting followers who are invested in you and what you're doing. And so like, that's why I don't do giveaways anymore. I don't do giveaways because then they're following me to get something. And then when they don't get it, they're upset and I become an account of something that they didn't win. They don't care. And so it's like those followers, while they boost your numbers, they aren't actually helpful. And so I think that letting the social feedback be analytics and be data and be like a learning opportunity for yourself is the best way you can do it. And just taking just not taking it personal. It's just analytics. It's just numbers. Like, I think that being able to laugh at yourself when you like, okay, that did not work. Great. Taking notes. Perfect. And then notice what works. Notice what people are resonating with. And like, understand that putting content out is basically just like, it's testing. It's always testing. You're testing what are people resonating with? What are people gaining value from? What is a voice that I have that is beneficial to people? And how can I lean in to what my ideal client needs to hear from me? And so identifying what that is, what your strong suits are by just posting and like trying different things. I posted a lot of things where like I go back later and I'm like, I don't love that. I don't love it. I feel a little cringy, but it's like I had to get out of my head because I was like, okay, I'm not sitting here thinking about someone else's content all day being like, wow, that was a really cringy thing that they did. Like, I'm going to remember that and write it down and like, it's so embarrassing for them. No, absolutely not. If I see something that doesn't resonate with me, I just scroll past it. Like, people are just going to scroll past something that they don't resonate with. And it's just not that big of a deal. It's not that deep. It's just not that deep. And that's something that I had to learn is that like people aren't thinking about you the way that you're thinking about you. And so you are going to be your harshest critic. And so getting out of your own way, I think is probably the best advice that I have for people trying to start a business is like, just take the ego out of it. Things are going to fail. The algorithm is going to like be weird sometimes. That's happened for me too. Like, you know, on most of my posts, I get routinely like anywhere from like 1,000 to 2,000 likes. That's pretty normal for me. I posted something the other day and it got like 400 likes. And that's the lowest I've gotten in a long time. And I used to like delete those posts, right? And I don't anymore because like I liked it and that's why I put it up. And this is my portfolio, my page. And I don't need your validation. Like your likes don't mean that I make good art. Your likes mean that I'm doing good at Instagram and kind of like separating those two because some of these huge accounts are not posting great content on Instagram. Like they're really good at the algorithm and they're posting a ton and they like are doing a lot of engaging things and working with people and getting collabs. And so they're having a huge reach because they're being really good at playing the game of social media. And then there's some artists, like you look up some of the world's best photographers on Instagram and like, they're just not into Instagram. They have 2,000 followers. They're like, their posts get no likes. And it's like, that's not where they're pouring their focus. It's not about talent. It's about skill of the internet. And so I think that realizing that just helped me take a lot of weight off of my shoulders of like, I am allowed to like things even if they don't perform well. It's just not it can't be the meter for like how good you feel about your work, because you will always be searching for more likes, more followers. It'll never be enough. And so I think that like coming to that realization within myself of like, I am already enough. What I create is already enough. And everything else is just like analytics of how can I spread my message? How can I get this in front of people? And just not having it be so personal. So I think that would be my biggest one. I think that another thing is that like, as you get better, your prices should get better, but also everything else should get better. Your website should become better. That was a big one for me. I put that off for a long time. But it was something that like when I finally updated my website to be something that I was really proud of, it made me feel so justified in my prices of like across the board, my branding's consistent. People know what they're getting when they come to me. So I think that branding and elevating all of the aspects of your business are important. And then I think that my other tip would just be to like follow what feels authentic to you and watch that grow into something that no one else could create.
I had a lot of thoughts about what you were talking about. I think I wish I would have, with my channel, I wish I would have not promoted it in areas where people might follow me just because they knew me but weren't interested, because you get inactive followers. That can be a real problem on YouTube. And then, it's also another thing I've struggled with is a lot of people, especially in the area that I create content, will act like you have to know everything, already have like tons of results on the platform before you can talk about something. And I don't think we have to know everything in order to create and to add value. And so I've been kind of finding my own way while doing this. But honestly, lately, I've been trying to get a little bit closer to the real mission, which is just to help people. That's what I enjoy. And if I can do that through an interview, then what does it matter? I'm still following that purpose. And so,
yeah,
I've
I
had
love that.
I've had to just stop worrying about what they think or what my numbers are at the moment and just focus on adding value, and the numbers will grow, and they have been. So,
That's amazing. I think that's so true. Just focus on adding value. And then it's like suddenly everything else matters a lot less. And you can just like get into a flow. And I think that that's really incredible. And I think that something really important in what you just said is like the flexibility. So you have a mission, right? You want to help people. And we can get really attached to the how of like what that's going to look like, how that's going to happen for us. But I think when we can kind of unattach and just follow our curiosity, follow our passion, and be less attached to like the how we're going to get there, we can find our own path that feels really authentic.
Yeah, because like a lot of the channels in my niche, they make content differently than I do. It's usually just them. It's very high production quality, stuff like that. But that's not necessarily required to add value. And like, because we're doing that right now. And there's a big channel that I follow that makes a lot of content, but has like other creators on the same channel making videos. And I realized like maybe that's a path in the future, because as long as the mission stays the same, what does it really matter how the message gets out there, or who's in the video, because you're in the video right now, you're adding value.
Yeah, I love that.
Anyway, the next thing I wanted to ask you, and something I think that my viewers will be really interested in, is what do you do to promote your content? Like, what do you physically do? How do you create your stuff? When do you post? Those kind of things.
Yeah, so I found that behind the scenes is really important for what I do. And so on every photo shoot, I'm setting up videos. I think that people seeing the behind the scenes of how it happened it really resonates with people. A quote that I really love is that like people are drawn to authenticity, not expertise. And so like that kind of leads into what you're saying of like, you don't have to know everything to add value. Actually, that's not what adds value. What adds value is you being authentic. People are drawn to that. And so I think that that's been a big thing for me is recording the process, showing people the behind the scenes. Like recently I posted a video where I talked about how I was doing this photo shoot and I had this big glass pane and I was going to paint on the glass pane and then have a model behind it. And I have behind the scenes footage of like me trying something and then like wiping it off and trying something. And I was like the voiceover was talking about how I kept trying something. It wasn't working out. I was getting frustrated. It didn't look the way that I wanted it to in my head. And then I had this moment where I was like, oh, wait, I have tons of friends who are artists. You're being silly. And so I like called my friend, and who's an incredible painter, and she gave me some really great advice. And so I talked about in the video about how like we're not alone in creation, and that it's not just me behind the scenes doing it all. Like collaboration is what makes my work what it is. And like on the photo shoot itself, my model was like, what if we put paint like across my face? And so like she, added that value, and that made it even cooler. And so like I enjoy something that I'm leaning into right now is like sharing the imperfections behind it all, and like sharing the process and the like the how, because I think that a lot of people resonate with that. If they see a bunch of perfect images on your page, they're like, wow, that's easy for them. That's a comment that I get a lot, is that like, you are so creative, this must be so easy for you. Like, how do you never run out of ideas? And it's like sharing with them that I have gone through months of having no ideas. It helps, because it helps them like make me a human in their mind, which gives them permission to also be a human and to like not have to be perfect. I think social media, we create this like perfected highlights reel, and it's nice to like throw some authenticity and some realness in there. And I think that really helps the people around us. And so I think that that's a big way that I have been leaning into content creation lately. Another would be engaging with people on my stories. I found that like stories is a really big way that I can like build relationships with my followers. And so I'll do like Q&As, and I love to just like, if I'm feeling inspired by something, sharing about it on my story, because like people want to feel inspired. And like, especially if they're following you because you create inspiring, beautiful art, whenever you can add value, it's like the three pillars, right? Like, does it add value? Does it entertain, or does it educate? Right. And so like, if I can, in one of those three avenues, if I can entertain someone, add value, or educate them, I know that I'm like showing up in a way that I feel really good about. And so I think that like just whatever growth I'm currently experiencing for myself, being able to share some of that process really makes me a human to people. And because of that, like I have really loyal followers who have been following me for years and years and years, and have supported everything I've ever done, and just like are my little cheerleaders all over the world, like people I'll never meet, but people that like message me when they've like discovered something about themselves, or message me like when they're feeling really inspired by something, and like want to just talk to me as a human. And so I think that that's been a really important part for my business too, because like I'm all about like quality over numbers. Like I want my followers to like feel like they're part of something.
So Christina, I know a lot of people struggle with deciding what they're going to charge their customers for their services. How would you help them determine their worth in that respect?
Well, I think it matters where they are in their journey and where their business is at. I think that there's a tendency to wrap yourself up in your business, to make it very personal, and then it becomes a matter of how much am I worth? But I think that looking at it as an experience, a product, what they're getting is more helpful. And so I think that as your skills develop and as you specialize, I think that your pricing should change. I mean, I have a lot of people coming to me that vastly undercharge for their services, like ridiculously so. And so for them, my advice is just like double it. Like for the people that come to me when they're like, oh, I think I'm going to charge $60 for a photo shoot. It's like, not only is that not what you're worth, what your gear, I mean, for photography as an example, like you're paying money to invest in all of your gear. You pay money for your programs, you pay money to drive to the photo shoot for gas, and then all of the time spent editing, right? And so I always tell people, like, not only is that not fair to you, it's also not fair to everyone else in the industry. Because when you charge $60 for a photo shoot, you're telling people this is what this art form is worth at this point, where it's like, you have talent, you should be charging more. And understanding, I think that a big thing for me was understanding that there is money out there. There's money out there, and that I deserve some of it. And that like, it's not a scarce resource. There's money being passed between people every day. And so kind of normalizing that, like every day, artists are making a living off of what they do. every day people are actually making a profit when they schedule their pricing, because they understand that work and time is put into it, and that costs money and time in their life. And so that they know not only what do I need to cover my bases, but also more and more, and then add tax, and so I think that like being able to understand that there's money every day, people are making money from this, you are not the exception. I think that really helps. And then I think that a game changer is what happens when you do raise your prices, what you notice. Because I think that when you have really low competitive pricing, what you get is people who are bargain shopping, people who are picking you because of your pricing. And so you get bad clients, honestly, people that are not invested in what you do. People that want you to create things that have no relevance to your artwork, like people that come to really incredible impressionist paintings and they're like painters and they're like, can you paint my dog? It's like you get people that don't really care about what you do, that just see you as like a means to an end. So you get bad clients. And also those are the clients that are like the pickiest, that want the most they're going to try to squeeze you for every penny's worth. Right. And so I've definitely had that experience of like me going over on a shoot back when I was when I had a really hard time setting boundaries, and people like asking me to stay longer and longer and longer, and me not standing up for myself. And so like those are the clients that you're going to get when you have a really low price point. And then something magical happens when you raise your prices, because people take you seriously. People understand that you are taking yourself seriously. And so they take you seriously. They have skin in the game. And so they are more invested in the photo shoot. They'll respond easier and faster. Like I just have better client interactions with a higher price point. And I also have to work less. And so it's just like literally a win-win-win-win. Like there's no reason to have super low pricing.
Well, I saw on some photographer's website basically saying, why don't you invest X amount of money in your photography? And I stopped and thought about it. I was like, invest. It is an investment. And so I was like, there's some power there if you actually really think about it.
Yes. Oh, like at a wedding, you're only going to have one wedding with that person. And like those photos are forever, and it's like, you're trying to save a couple bucks now, but like I've seen some really bad wedding photographers in my time. And like, I just feel sorry for the person whose wedding I'm attending when I see their photographer is sitting outside for most of it and doesn't care about what's going on, like pay someone who cares and loves what they do, and they're probably going to have a higher price.
That is one thing I did right when I got married, was I paid for the most expensive option and shelled out all that money, and the pictures are great,
Yep.
And I'm thinking of this one photographer that takes fine pictures. I've seen them do it for the family and extended family, but they're not you. And you can see it in the photography. There's nothing wrong, but there's nothing right either, I don't know how else to say that, there's skill levels there,
Yes.
But anyway, so one thing that I really struggle with, and something that you've already succeeded at, is finding your style. Could you tell me how I can find my own style? Because I'm struggling immensely with this. I kind of just make my style up, and I want to stop doing that.
I think that the first thing to do is market research. And so you need to find people who have a style that you like, because I think that that's something that's really important, is that we don't have to create the wheel. We don't have to start over from ground zero with no reference. Like it's okay to look at what's working for other people and see how you can take that and apply it to your own style. And so finding things that resonate will help you with that. So gather those and look at them and say, what do these have in common? And then create something for yourself that feels in that genre. Another thing that I love to focus on is color theory. Colors create certain emotions in people. And so depending on what type of content you're trying to create, what kind of feeling you're trying to evoke in someone, the different colors that you use for your marketing are going to be really important.
Okay. The last thing I wanted to kind of pick your brain about was, how did you get 15,000 followers on Instagram? Because I struggle immensely with that platform. And I think a lot of my viewers would love to know how to grow a successful Instagram, because I see a lot of people trying to promote YouTube with Instagram and not really knowing what to do and not getting any traction. So what would you say?
I think that Instagram is about consistency, which is so annoying. But it's just true. Like when I'm really consistent, my content just does better and better. I think that Instagram really likes to see that you're engaged with the platform. Using different features of Instagram is great too, like going live. Make sure you're posting reels, obviously, for like the new algorithm that they have. They're prioritizing video content. And I think that while understanding that YouTube is more like long form content, Instagram is, you need to catch their attention immediately. You need to catch their attention immediately, and they're going to decide if they want to watch the rest of your video or engage with the rest of your content. So I try to add value in lots of different ways. I try to obviously have beautiful photos because I'm a photographer, but I love to put behind the scene video. I love to do voiceovers, and I love captions. I really take a lot of time and think out my captions before I post them, because I'm trying to engage and connect with my ideal client. And so I'm thinking like, what do they need to hear from me? What can I showcase that will help them not only understand what kind of work I do, but what kind of business I'm running and what kind of person I am.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll start working on that as soon as I can get some photos shot. But yeah, basically I was talking to somebody else that was pretty successful on Instagram, and they were saying to try to make your content such that people would want to interact with it, like have a question at the end or something. Would you recommend that, to increase engagement?
That worked really well for me. Like a year ago, that I did that a ton. For some reason, I've been noticing that it's not the questions that people are engaging with as much anymore. It's like, at least with my content, for me, I try to instead pour that, like, I try to have content that's worth commenting about. Something that's unusual, something that's strange, something that's eye-catching, that's attention grabbing, something that like makes people be like, oh, I want to talk about this. Because I think that that's a little bit more helpful. Recently, for me, questions haven't been as helpful on Instagram posts. They're more helpful on Instagram stories, in my personal experience.